Okay, for the recording, welcome back. We are ACI Course 6, Class 7. It is September 27th, 2024. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom, and see them there with you just by way of your thinking of them. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you, smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiates from them, that beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize that the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. We're learning that this is possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And that longing into an intention. And with that intention, turn your mind back to your precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet, to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please, please teach us that. And they they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer to make our promise. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratnamandalakam Niryatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that we do in sharing, that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every other. I'm looking forward to my schedule, our schedule into next year. Once we finish this course, as you know, I'll be traveling and won't be back until December. And then there's the Kyoto Lamrim, and then there's the Rejoicing Festival, and then there's the holidays, for us Westerners. And then there's the first 2 weeks of January is the Mexico meditation retreat. So we won't really be back in business until mid-January. And then the end of January is Chinese New Year, which, half of this group isn't here this morning, but they're in Malaysia. And so we bump up against the 2 weeks of busy for the Malaysians. So I'm trying to figure out what to fit in where so that we don't go all the way till February, because that just seems like a really long time and we'll lose momentum. So usually in between the Karma course and this course, I put in the Heart Sutra meditation module, and I didn't do it because we're teaching it, as a retreat soon coming up. But I'm thinking maybe for this group, we could squeeze in a couple of Heart Sutra practice module in December, and then the rest of it in January, like mid-January to before Chinese New Year's. It's got 8 classes, no homeworks, no quizzes. And so we'd be doing something to keep us on track. And then we would start course 7, February 14th. Morning of the 14th. So just so you have a heads up, that's what I anticipate is coming, and I'll pin it down. I'm waiting for Geshe Michael's schedule to really pin down my schedule, and then I'll set up for all of 2025. We'll sort out how and when we'll go through. I hope to do 7, 8, and 9. next year. Okay, thank you. So last class was an important one. And one of the things that we learned was those two meanings of Nyenjin, of renunciation, and how renunciation is what gets us started on our spiritual path. And so one meaning of renunciation was coming out of the, technically coming out of the home life, but meaning coming out of the worldly life, but not meaning giving up everything and going to live under a bridge, but meaning the state of mind, giving up the state of mind that there'll be something I can find in my worldly life that will make me happy, that there's something that I can do in my worldly life that will make something else happen that will make me happy, right? In the worldly way, we're giving up our worldly interaction. No, that's not even right. Our belief in worldly interactions as the source of our happiness. Then there's that ultimate renunciation or higher renunciation, which is definitely coming out of suffering, of the suffering world, reaching the place where we're no longer perpetuating samsara. And we talked about this renunciation as what starts us on our path, number one. But this level of renunciation, the definitely coming out of samsara, means we've reached, at least our goal, or on very close to to the end of our goal, which is really the beginning of our career, Buddhahood, right? So renunciation of worldly life requires enough disgust, disinterest, like with the old way of being, that we go searching and then apply ourselves to behaving in a new way, a different way. And we meet some path and we study that path and we try to practice that path to see if it works. So in order to reach Soklam, the direct perception of emptiness, we arrive at it through this renunciation, this learned state of mind of renunciation, through which we study, learn, practice, through which we gather the goodness that ripens as our direct perception of dependent origination, the Juchok, followed by the direct perception of ultimate reality, followed by the direct perception of what comes to be known as the four Arya truths. And then that puts us on our fourth path, where we learn to live according to what we now know is true, but we are not seeing it that way anymore. So we can't reach path of seeing without starting on the path of accumulation and moving through the path of preparation, as we learned last class. Then your quiz said, name and describe the principle most important for reaching the intellectual understanding of emptiness on your path of preparation. And this is that topic called quality and characteristic, chi chedak, qualities and things that are characteristic of that quality, and how that coming to working with that intellectually will bring us to the direct perception of what that actually means, and how we are in fact only experiencing these mental images of complete whole things, complete whole selves, that we can't in fact actually experience, right? It has to be coming through this mental image. So we learned that there are 4 kinds of qualities and characteristics. And the importance of understanding those 4 is it explains the 4 ways of perceiving mental images and how we mistake those mental images for self-existent things. So it's probably all still sounding pretty cryptic. And I remember first hearing Chi Chedok, and it's like he says, this is the most important thing. Study it, debate it, work with it. But we only get an explanation of it for like 10 minutes out of the hours and hours of ACI. Because it's like there's really nothing more that can be said about it except car, a car, the car, that car, my car, your car, good car, bad car. We like work with it. And slowly over time, for me, it was very slowly over time, it became, oh, right? Like I'd start to understand it better and better as I learned everything else. So your quiz also said, give 2 examples each of the 4 objects of J Top Yeshe. That would take us all class. I'm not going to do it. And number 4, what 2 mental afflictions are stopped forever by your direct perception of emptiness? So out of the 84,000 mental afflictions that we apparently have, 2 of them go away completely forever, not just this lifetime, but forever, as we come out of our direct perception of emptiness. One of them is the intellectual belief in things having their own natures. The intellectual belief that anything could be anything other than our own seed ripening experiences. Dunchis, drachis. Intellectual belief. We still have the innate belief, meaning the innate seeing things that way, out there coming at me, but we don't believe it. Forever, don't believe it. The second mental affliction we lose is doubt that the Buddhist path can lead to an end of suffering. So it's not just that we lose all doubt, because we don't lose all doubt. What we lose is doubt in the Buddhist path as being what will end suffering. And that's critical, because even though we no longer believe things are coming at me, they still appear that way. And we still have all those other mental afflictions that will arise in response to those things that are happening to me. And we still have the seeds from all kinds of past selfishness. So there's still going to be bad things happening to us. And I could imagine that we're on a roll with our practice, and we're really keeping our vows, and our behavior is really going well, and everything's going well, and then something just terrible happens. I use Precious Jigme as an example. She just serves the Lama, serves the Lama, either directly or through everybody else. And then she gets sick. It's like, how can you get sick when you have so much goodness? And then she starts to get better, and she serves and serves and serves, and she gets sick again. It's like, how can that be? And how could it not make you wonder, right? I'm so good, I'm so good, I'm so good, and I still have that happen. So at some point, we will clearly understand, and that will not rock our belief in the path. It's like beyond belief. It's direct perception, conviction that this process that we call the Mahayana Buddhist path is what will work. And so there's no more searching, there's no more right? There's no more wondering if maybe it's a different way. And it really, it would be a real amazing state of mind, wouldn't it? To be so sure. So we had said that this thing called chicharak, when we experience it, Geshe-la says perfectly, meaning directly, it puts us into the direct perception of emptiness next. This understanding of how a whole pot on stove is impossible in and of it, and that what we're experiencing is this ripening mental seed, that a mental seed, right, that is complete. The mental seed pot on stove has a bottom, has a back, has the handle. It has parts that we can't see directly. And if there were a pot on the stove, from it, we couldn't interact with it, right? That's a longer story. So having this experience of the dunchi, experiencing your object arising out of your mind, this idealized whole from past experience, a dunchi, or an idealized whole from past experience based on what we've heard, making our reality. We've come to witness directly how our experience is simply our mind organizing bits of information and making it into our experience. A whole, complete, real, valid, painful, or happy experience. So we learned the whole topic is called Chi Chedok, and within that topic there were the 4 kinds of qis, the sok chi that isn't really so helpful, and then the rik chi, and then technically within the category of rik chi there are the dun chis and the dra chis. Dun chis being the mental images that come from something we've experienced before, and the dra chis, the mental images coming from something we've only heard about before. The dun chis and dra chis are particular cases of rik chi. The conclusion is that there's no reality outside of our mind that demands it be that, whatever we're experiencing. It has to be this idealization that our mind has made. And it's reasonable that we do, provided we are in a valid state of mind. We're not intoxicated, high, so sick, etc. But it's not that the objects of that experience are coming from their side. And so Geshe-la said again, just think about motor vehicles and Toyotas. You perceive a Toyota, you know motor vehicle. You think motor vehicle, and you don't, right? It's a big category. You almost can't hold a specific motor vehicle, can you? It's just an idea. In order to have a specific, it has to be a motor vehicle. And that a motor vehicle is a particular kind or model or look or etc. So this came up because in the sutra, Lord Buddha said to Subhuti, what do you think? Does a stream enterer call themselves a stream enterer? And Subhuti goes, no, they don't. And it's a little confusing. Like, won't we know that we're Arya once we're Arya? I think so. Right? Yes, I know so. You will know. But why won't you say, now I'm an Arya? We learned it's not going to happen when you're in the direct perception of emptiness, because to have that thought is deceptive reality, not ultimate reality. But what about when you come down out of it? Aren't you going to think to yourself, what, wow, we are. Of course we are. In Kamala Shila's commentary, he goes into it much more deeply. The punchline is, even as you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm Arya, you're in the position where that's appearing to you as a self-existent thing, and you're wrong about that. You know that what you mean by I'm an Arya is that it seeds ripening that new perception of yourself. And technically, says Kamala Shila, the reason you wouldn't verbalize it is because you don't want to hear yourself hearing it wrongly, because you're gonna. It's really slippery. So, of course but you'll very carefully not let yourself hear yourself identify in that way wrongly. And then we also hear and actually later on have a vow about not saying it to anyone else. And partly is because you don't want to mishear yourself saying it to anyone else. And because that the other person, if they're not Arya, they're going to hear it wrongly as well. And you don't want them to plant those seeds. And then that some people, even if they know the method, might hear it and go, no way. Like, what if one of your co-students that maybe you don't even think so highly of one day says, I saw emptiness directly. Your mind is going to go, no way. Right? And that's a seed planting that blocks our own realization. So you just don't put somebody in that position. And then further, you don't ever say you saw it directly when you didn't. And you'll know whether you did or you didn't. Again, because you don't want that seed in your mind of saying an untruth. So anyway, Buddha goes on. Yeah, and if a stream enterer does say, now I'm a stream enterer, then we can't call them a stream enterer, says the sutra we'll hear. But he goes on. Buddha goes on with, what about once returners? What about non-returners? And then he gets to, what about arhats? Is an arhat an arhat? Does an arhat say, no, I'm an arhat? And of course, Subhuti's going to say, no, right? They don't call themselves arhat. But then he goes on to say, and by the way, I'm an arhat. And it's like, hey, what? So let's do the vocabulary. So arhat is the Sanskrit word. Drachomba is the Tibetan word. Sometimes you see the Sanskrit written with this N, arhant. And it's the same, it means the same thing. And I don't know why sometimes it has the N. but it confused me for a long time. Now, in Sanskrit, there's the root of the word, and then there's what you add on to it that makes the meaning of the word. Apparently, this word arhat can be, it could have the root AR and the hat added to it, or it can be the root ARH and the AT added to it, in which case they have different meanings, but so the real meaning of arhat is a combination of those two. So this one, arhat, where is it? Ar means enemy or foe. Hat means conqueror or destroy. Enemy destroyer. Arhat then means someone who has destroyed all their enemies. And who are our enemies really? It's all of our mental afflictions, particularly the mental affliction of experiencing self and others as having their identities in them from them. So our ignorance is really our biggest foe destroyer, or foe that needs to be destroyed. And all the other mental afflictions that come from that. So arhat is foe destroyer. They are one who has destroyed all their mental afflictions. So in order to destroy all mental afflictions, we need to start by destroying those two, in particular, the intellectual belief in things having their own nature. And then we set about to burn off or destroy the rest of the seeds for mental afflictions that we've accumulated since beginningless time. No wonder it takes a while. When we reach that final destruction of mental afflictions and seeds for more, we are arhat. If you take the root of arhat to be ARH and then the AT, it means it means to be worthy, someone who is worthy. And here they mean worthy of being prostrated to by others. And it sounds kind of weird. It's like, is that really part of our aspiration to become one that people will bow down to? It sounds wrong, right? It sounds prideful. But the point isn't, the point is that being someone who's free of mental afflictions makes us a powerful karmic object. And that means we are worthy of others' prostrations. It means worthy of others' honor. We don't go around going, you prostrate to me. That's not it. It's that when anyone does something towards me, I'm not saying me, oneself, the arhat, when someone does anything towards an arhat, it's powerful, powerful karmic seeds. So arhat's going to be really careful, right? Not to try to not to do anything that would trigger somebody doing something that person would make negative seeds as a result. Right? There's a certain responsibility in seeing oneself as arhat. So anyway, merge those two together. Powerful, you become this powerful karmic object by way of reaching that state where you have no more mental afflictions. It's kind of hard to even conceive. The Tibetans translate the arhat, the foe destroyer, Dra Chomba. Sometimes it sounds like Chumba, or you'll see it Chumba, but I believe the correct spelling is Dra Chomba. enemy destroyer, having destroyed all mental afflictions and their seeds. Now, we use these terms, arhat and drachomba, for someone who has reached nirvana. We reach nirvana. Do you remember that definition of nirvana? I can't pull it out word for word, but having destroyed all mental afflictions and seeds for more due to the individual analysis, which was code for seeing the four Arya truths as a result of the direct perception of emptiness and then learning to live according to them. We go on to stop replanting ignorantly driven mental afflictions. We damage past ignorantly planted seeds to the extent that we reach a point where there's no more active mental afflictions, and the seeds that are left over have been so damaged that they can't ripen into a mental affliction. And that's a state called nirvana, which for a non-Mahayana Buddhist, that's apparently their goal. Their four paths are directed towards reaching that state of freedom from mental afflictions. And somehow they don't have the idea that full Buddhahood is they're capable of that. I don't quite understand that. For a Mahayanist, someone who in their path of accumulation and preparation, their heart has already turned to the concern of other people's suffering as well as their own. And they've been training in their bodhicitta, the wish to reach total enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, such that when we have our direct perception and come out of it, right, the mind imbued with bodhicitta, direct perception of emptiness, puts us on this conveyor belt towards full Buddhahood. And we've learned that the difference between nirvana and full Buddhahood is the destruction of those remnant seeds that are stained with ignorance, that are so damaged they can't fully ripen, but are still in there. And they call them obstacles to omniscience. So this dust, right, in our mind from having seen emptiness directly needs to be, I want to say cleaned out, although I don't think that's the accurate mental image. In order for our mind to experience itself as perceiving emptiness and dependent origination simultaneously, propelled by compassion and love. So the Mahayanists don't say, I reached nirvana. They don't stop there. And so they make the distinction of saying reaching the 8th level bodhisattva bhumi is the same state of mind of freedom from mental afflictions, but it's a mind imbued with bodhicitta, which a nirvana mind is not. So the Mahayana tradition has come to make this distinction. I'm going to say that Gelugpa makes this distinction, but it's not saying that, oh, to reach nirvana is some lesser state at all. So it just gets confusing with the term nirvana, arhat. Okay. There's another term that's used. It's not within the words, but it's in the context of reaching this state of mind that's free of mental afflictions. It's called reaching the extreme of peace, P-E-A-C, P-E-A-C-E, peace. The extreme of peace means your mind is incapable of having any distress of any kind. It doesn't mean you're like a robot, right? Life still is happening. But all the reasons why we get upset have been finished off. So it would be a very peaceful state of mind. So in the sutra, Lord Buddha asked Subhuti, what do you think, Subhuti? Is an arhat an arhat? And Subhuti answers, well, if the arhat thinks to himself, oh, now I am an arhat, then he's not an arhat. Right? It's this recurring theme. Because they go on to say, which is why we can call them an arhat. But Subhuti says, or somebody says, I'm not sure which one, says, well, if that arhat thinks to himself, now I am an arhat, they won't receive their prediction. It's called the lung tempa. So apparently, sometime on our 8th level Bodhisattva Bhumi career, which implies we're Mahayanist, who've seen emptiness directly, who's worked with our 6 perfections, and we've reached this level where no more perceiving things as self-existent happening. We will have the experience where the Buddha will come to us and say, oh, Roxana, you will become Buddha such and such on September 27, 2535 on planet Xerxes. And you will teach compassion and emptiness to the beings there. Congratulations. You get your lung tempa. Before then, like before, when we saw emptiness directly, we heard, I saw my future Buddhahood. In this conviction that it will happen. But at this point, on 8th level, we get the specific. We can't get that until we have the mind that is free of mental afflictions. Right? What it means to get to the 8th level is that none of our perceptions are polluted by the ignorance of seeing things, identities in them, which would include seeing our own identity in us. We still have those subtle seeds of ignorance, but we're no longer perceiving things in that old mistaken way. The innate belief is now gone. It's not really innate belief, it's the innate experiencing of things having their own nature is gone in that 8th Bodhisattva Bhumi. So that all happens because of having seen emptiness directly. So we're trying to work out what's the connection between seeing things as self-existent and having mental afflictions. Because what's the connection between stopping seeing things as self-existent and stopping our mental afflictions? Like, we wish Buddha would just come out and say it, right? He just gives us these little snippets of conversation with Subhuti, but what he's talking about is this issue. Like, what is it to be free of mental afflictions, and why does that require not seeing things as self-existent? So there's a little background that we need in order to put this pieces of the puzzle together, right? I love that analogy of a jigsaw puzzle. We're up here in this little corner putting together this particular section. So there's a term called things that will never grow. And it refers to two things, two kinds of things that can never grow. One of them is emptiness. Emptiness can never grow, in the sense that the emptiness of our friend the pen, the instant we have a pen here, its lack of self nature being in it is 100%. Its emptiness doesn't start teeny and grow to be complete and then decrease. It's there when the pen is there. When the pen is gone, the emptiness of the pen is 100% gone. So it's 100% or not at all. Even as our friend the pen, can you barely see it? There's a little bit of it. The little bit of it has 100% no self-nature. Now here's more of it, but not all of it. It's still 100% no self-nature. Do you get it? So emptiness is a thing that never grows, because it never increases, decreases, full or not. The other thing that will never grow is the subtle seeds of ignorance in the mind of an 8th level bodhisattva. So I just talked about that. 8th level bodhisattva means we've reached the place where we are no longer seeing, experiencing things as having their identities in them. It's not that we have to think about it. There's just not that perception at all anymore. But there are still those remnants of past ignorance left in the mind, because an 8th level bodhisattva is not omniscient. They are not experiencing ultimate reality and dependent reality simultaneously. And that's blocked by these little remnants of misunderstanding. But those remnants are so damaged, there's nothing that could happen that would make that 8th level bodhisattva, not yet full-on Buddha, experience anything with its own nature in it. Nothing can get those seeds to ripen. You can't fall backwards. So this term lung tempa, here it is. It has several different meanings. The word lung has several different meanings. We've heard it in relation to the subtle energy of our subtle bodies, that prana in Sanskrit, like psychic energy, qi in Chinese, medicine, not the qi as in chi charak, that's Tibetan. That lung means wind. And we need wind for our mind to move, like the horse and rider. I think we've all heard that analogy. Then the word lung also means the word, in the sense of when a teacher gives an oral transmission of something, that's called giving a lung. When we receive empowerment, we receive a lung. We'll do it for Diamond Cutter Sutra. I'll just read it. You'll listen. I'll be giving the lung, which I can do because I received that lung a couple of times, in fact. And then you will have the transmission that you will be qualified to give a lung. You can read the Diamond Cutter Sutra to somebody, having never received a lung, but it'll have a different impact on your mind and their mind than if you've received the oral transmission and then you pass it along. Okay. Then the word tampa means to show or to give. It's often used as a term for teacher because the teacher shows or gives us, right, what we need. But then this term, lung tempa, it can refer to when the Buddha declared something specifically. So there were some times when Buddha declared certain activities as karmically active, in the sense that this behavior, this state of mind is karmically virtuous. And this behavior, this state of mind is karmically negative. He declared it. And that's called giving a lung tempa. So for instance, he said that state of mind, notsa, shame, is a virtue. So we tend to think, oh, shame is, right, that's an unpleasant state of mind. I don't want to be ashamed of myself. I don't want to cultivate shame. But he's saying here, shame is this idea of having this high sense of personal morality, such that you will refuse to do a negative deed, even if nobody else would ever know about it, because you yourself hold yourself to this higher standard. And it takes a sense of shame to be able to make that kind of determination. And he says, that's a positive state of mind. No matter whether you think it feels ugly, you're making goodness. Then he also did a lung tempa regarding anger. He said, anger, any instant of anger is a negative karma, meaning it will bring a result that's unpleasant. And we can see too why he would have declared this one, done a lung tempa about anger, because we so easily justify our anger, right? It's like, this situation needed me to be angry about it, right? The justifiable anger. And he's pointing out that that's only going to bring somebody justifiably angry at you, and it'll be unpleasant, right? Justified or not, anger and the receiving of anger is unpleasant and perpetuates our ignorance. So don't do it. But then, so there are also things that he did not declare as karmically active or karmically not active, like sleep. And it just was not declared as positive or negative. So they say it's a neutral karma. And then there's lung ma tempa, things that Lord Buddha actually refused to declare, which is different than just not declaring. And this refers to those 14 questions that he refused to answer. I don't know the 14. But the context of that, Geshe Michael shares, is non-Buddhists asking Lord Buddha about stuff like the end of suffering, the end of our mind, the end of time, the beginning of time, the beginning of suffering. And Buddha knew that any way he answered those questions, the being who was asking would misunderstand. That they weren't really asking, it wasn't appropriate to teach them the pen thing so that they might really understand the answer. He knew that either way it would harm the person for him to try to understand. So he just refused to answer those questions. So now there's another meaning of lung tempa. All right, so that when he refused to answer, it's called lung ma tempa, because the ma makes it a negation. So there's another meaning of lung tempa, and that's the giving the prediction. So I already said there'll come a time on your 8th level Bodhisattva Bumiyu where Buddha will appear to you, and whatever your name is at that time, you will become Buddha such and such, different name, on planet so and so on this particular day, and you will do this kind of teaching. That's called receiving your lung tempa. The final prediction, it's called. Buddha Shakyamuni, before he was Buddha Shakyamuni, received it from Buddha Dipamkara, maker of light, who predicted him becoming Buddha Shakyamuni and then manifesting on planet Earth and doing what he did. So in the scripture, we'll see Buddha says, like did I receive my prediction from Buddha Dipamkara? And yeah, he's Buddha, he did. He must have. But he's going to say that the lung tempa that I received was not a lung tempa, right? He's going to allude to the fact that he had to have been aware of the emptiness of the 3 spheres of the lung tempa while it was happening in order for it to be the lung tempa. Are you following me? Let's take a break before I go there, because it's going to take me more than 2 minutes to do it. So I will stop the share and pause the recording, get refreshed, come back in a couple of minutes, please. Okay, so Subhuti has said, if someone reaches 8th level Bodhisattva Bhumi, Arhat, and thought to themselves, now I've reached Arhat, then the Buddha wouldn't come to them to make the final prediction. Meaning, if that person is thinking, I've become Arhat in some self-existent way, something self-existent about themselves as Arhat, they aren't Arhat. Because what it is to be Arhat is no more ripening self-existent things. But come on, doesn't Buddha think of themselves as Buddha? And there's scripture, one particular sutra where Lord Buddha declares it's a non-virtue to steal the Buddha's begging bowl. Somebody must have done it or was considering doing it. I don't know the circumstance. And he's concerned about the terrible karmic seeds planted in the mind by someone who would take the Buddha's begging bowl. He doesn't care about his begging bowl. But the point is, it's clear that Buddha is thinking about, is holding that he has a begging bowl that belongs to him. So, like, isn't the Buddha holding to a themself that has a begging bowl? So can't an 8th level bodhisattva be holding to a themself that could get the prediction? And again, from a Buddha's side, there's no conundrum. But it sounds like a conundrum because we're thinking self-existently about the Buddha and his begging bowl. So in the sutra, every time they say, if when we call this, if an arhat calls himself an arhat, he can't be an arhat, which is why we can call him an arhat. It's reminding us of the emptiness of the 3 spheres. Right? I don't know how you'll say in your own mind the recognition that you've reached 8th level bodhisattva. I play with it in my own mind. 8th level bodhisattva ripening, because you're going to try really, really. I mean, you won't need to try. You won't hear yourself self-existently. So I don't know, would language change? At least on the way, trying to get there. I try to play with it. I tried once in retreat to go like the whole day without thinking I, me, mine. I tried to drop it. And, I wasn't even speaking. I was just watching my mind. And it was like, I have to go to the bathroom. And to break that down, it's like sensations happening. Those sensations need this action. Go, literally. Right? It's like language just fails when you try to not replant the misunderstanding. It was kind of fun. But I couldn't go, more than a few minutes at a time, but repeated few minutes. Sorry, got distracted here. So when they say, no, they don't call themselves arhat, it means self-existent arhat, which seems silly because they can't hold self-existent arhat. But it's a teaching for us, because when I hear Subhuti then go, and by the way, I'm an arhat, my mind hears it wrong. And I go, why would he say that when he just said, arhat will not say I'm arhat? Because he's understanding what he's saying. I'm not understanding what he's saying. And that's what leads us to the Korsumi Mikpa. Only Buddha does it by saying, did that Buddha Dipamkara give me the prediction on my 8th level bodhisattva bhumi? And we say, of course, because you're Buddha. And he says, of course not, because I'm Buddha. So Buddha Dipamkara, as he's there with, whoever it was that he was making the prediction to, did Buddha Dipamkara see himself as Dipamkara, separate, from the one receiving the prediction, separate, from the giving the prediction, separate? No. Did Buddha Dipamkara see the recipient of the prediction as some self-existent being? No. Did Buddha Dipankara hear the prediction happening and hold it to be some self-existent thing? No. Buddha Dipankara was experiencing the ripening of that mind's own dunchis into me giving the prediction to this being. And so it happened from Dipankara's side. What about the one who was to become Shakyamuni Buddha? He's at 8th level Bodhisattva Bhumi. Can't be seeing things as self-existent either, but is not seeing emptiness and dependent origination simultaneously the way Dipankara is. I didn't add that piece. So the receiver, you the receiver of the prediction, is knowing that the Buddha who's giving you your prediction is a ripening of your own mental seeds. Does that mean they're not real? No, they're very real. Does that mean you just made them up? No, it's forced from your goodness. Does that mean it's not really happening? No, it is happening. Does that mean it's happening the way I'm imagining it will be when the Buddha shows up? Right? No, that one's wrong. So you, the 8th level Bodhisattva, receiving your prediction, also are experiencing this experience as your own seeds ripening. Me receiving my final prediction from a Buddha happening. So it can happen. So then did Dipankara give the one to become Buddha their final prediction? Like you have to say, depends on who's looking, right? It's really hard to answer the question, because if we say yes to someone who's thinking self-existently, well, that didn't happen. Self-existent receiving of the prediction is impossible. Didn't happen. Seeds ripening prediction did happen. So how many predictions happened? The one Dipankara heard himself giving and the one the recipient received. Was it the same one? Did Dipankara say you're going to become, Buddha such and such on that planet, but you heard Buddha this and that on that planet? I don't think so. But it could have been, we don't know. So there are the korsum in the receiving the prediction is the lung tempa is the prediction itself, the words of the prediction. Do the words have any self-existent meaning? No. The lung tempa po is the one giving the prediction. Did Dipankara have any self-existent nature of Dipankara? No, the Dipankara to themselves was unique to them. The Dipankara from the one receiving was unique to them, and so it could happen. And Lung Tempar Jawa is the receiver. What about the receiver? Was Dipankara perceiving the same receiver as the receiver was perceiving themselves as? Yeah, that one's a little slipperier, because as an omniscient being, they're perceiving that being from their seeds, And they're perceiving that being, perceiving themselves from their own seeds. And so we might want to try and say, well, they are then perceiving that other one in the same way as they're perceiving themselves, but we would be wrong because they're also perceiving the emptiness at the same time. And the receiver person is not perceiving their emptiness directly at the same time, so they're not perceiving the same one. Does that mean it's not happening? No. That's how things have always happened. As emptiness of the three spheres of every moment of every experience. And so every experience has been seeds ripening of the subject side, the object side, and the interaction between. That's how it's always been. We've just never experienced it that way until our direct perception of dependent origination. So the emptiness of the three spheres in the prediction, both parties are directly experiencing that understanding. The omniscient being is also experiencing the emptiness directly. The recipient of the prediction is experiencing the seeds ripening happening, which is why it can happen. And if there's any seeing things as self-existent happening, then that prediction can't happen. If we're thinking a Buddha in them, from them, can come to a me, in me, from me, and give me the prediction because they know something I don't know, and they can give it to me, it won't ever happen, right? Even if we imagine it or dream it or have a hallucination of it, if we're holding things as their natures in them, from them, it wasn't our prediction. Because in order for it to be the prediction, it has to be free of that belief in self-existence. So like it feels like I'm going round and round and round and round and not ever getting to the answer. Why is it that it's necessary to see emptiness directly in order to stop our mental afflictions? So from this oblique discussion of the emptiness of the three spheres, or to what it is to not see the three spheres, korsum mimikpa, in the context of being stream enterer, arhat, and receiving your prediction, Buddha changes the subject again. And he says, O Subhuti, the one thus gone now speaks to you of the highest perfection. And the highest perfection which the one thus gone now speaks to you is that same highest perfection which conquering Buddhas beyond any number to count have spoken as well. And that is precisely why we can call it the highest perfection. And I say to you further, O Subhuti, that the perfection of patience spoken by the ones thus gone is a perfection that does not even exist. So he's saying the highest perfection is the perfection of patience, and it doesn't exist, right? Are we on to him about how it is that it doesn't exist? As nothing other than our seeds ripening the perfection of patience, the ability to not even ability, the circumstance of not getting angry in the face of a situation where we would or even should in old world view. He goes on. Why is it so? Because of Subhuti. Meaning, why am I saying that? Because, O Subhuti, there was a time when the king of Kalinka was cutting off the larger limbs and the smaller appendages of my body. At that moment, there came into my mind no conception of a self, nor of a sentient being, nor of a living being, nor of a person. I had no conception at all, but neither did I have no conception. And why is it so? Suppose, O Subhuti, that at that moment, any conception of a self had come into my mind. Then the thought to harm someone would have come into my mind as well. The conception of some sentient being, and the conception of some living being, and the conception of some person would have come into my mind. And because of that, the thought to harm someone would have come into my mind as well. So Buddha is addressing this question about how, because of seeing emptiness directly, we can now be korsum mimikpa, not seeing the three spheres, meaning subject object interaction between as having their own identities. We're not seeing them that way anymore. And how that state, in that state, we cannot have anger. We cannot have a mental affliction. Not just won't, but can't. So he uses this example from when he was not yet Buddha, but apparently it just says a yogi, but apparently 8th level bodhisattva at this point. And the story is yogis out meditating in the forest, and the queen of the king of the area is out gathering flowers, and she comes across him, and she sits down and is asking him questions. And the king's out hunting, and he comes across the two of them in the forest, and he gets the wrong idea. He thinks hanky-panky's been going on. He gets wickedly upset and has his men tie the yogi down and start cutting off, right, his fingers, his wrists, his elbows. And the yogi is saying, in that situation, in that situation, I was aware that my seeds ripening the whole situation, making the king do it, making the cutting, making the pain, and making whatever reaction was arising in me. He's saying he was aware that his no longer belief in a self-existent self was happening. His no longer belief in a self-existent, my fingers, my appendages, was happening. His no longer belief in his self that's going through lifetime, and no longer belief in the self-existent self that goes from life to life. Does that mean he's sitting there and not experiencing any of it? No. Does it mean the experience was not painful. No. Does it mean his direct experience of it all being his own seeds ripening allowed him to blame the king for the pain he was having? No. Do you see? When you understand it's my seeds ripening, there's no place for blaming the other. And in fact, when we hear the details of the story from Kamala Shila's commentary, the yogi, the story says the yogi's response was to the king was being, oh, king, I love you so much. You know, I love you so much. And the king would get madder. And he goes, who the hell are you? You know, my name is the master of patience. Patience, you know, wow, let's see how patient you are. And he'd cut something else off, and the guy would just say, oh, king, I love you so much. And it's like, how can you love somebody who's cutting you up out of a misunderstanding? You know, you were helping the queen. But the yogi understood that he didn't even know he had these deep seeds still inside him. Life had gotten so easy. But there were still that yuck inside. So he wasn't yet 8th level Bodhisattva, because there was still some, well, no, he was, because he's not having the mental affliction. He does have yuck still inside. And he knows that the king is being forced to act that way by his own seeds. And he knows that that's like the end. When this is done, no more of that kind of seeds in the whole universe. And so he's actually kind of happy, right? In a weird kind of way. And so it's like, king, thank you so much. That would be bizarre, right? Cut me some more. Thank you so much. Because he's so aware that it's burning off his own really awful seeds. So he's happy about it. And then the story goes on. The king finally says, prove to me your master patience. And the guy does an act of truth. He says, if it's true that I really am loving the king right now, then may my appendages all reattach. And the fingers and toes and arms, they all jump up and reattach. You know, imagine the king. Egads. And, you know, the story goes on, the king becomes a disciple and blah, blah, blah. But the point is, the better we understand where things are really coming from, the better we can, the wiser we can choose our response to them. So as we're moving along our path of habituation, we've only lost those two mental afflictions: belief in things having their own nature and doubt in the path. We go back to seeing things as having their own nature. Our mind still blames the stupid driver. Our mind still blames things for our experience. The driver cuts me off. I get offended. I don't like being offended. I react badly. The dominoes fall. When we have it happen, but no, oh, it's just my seeds ripening, we still have the unpleasant feeling. We still want to avoid it, but we go, I am not going to do anything that will make some negative circumstance in the future, right? Because we've still had the unpleasant, but we decide to respond differently. As we do that, so say it's like a recurring theme that we get mad that somebody cuts us off in traffic, and we decide, I'm going to work with that one. And every time it happens, you get upset, but you back off and, you know, here you go. You must be in a hurry. You're welcome. And we plant different seeds. We're burning off, we're not replanting. Somewhere else in life, we're looking for where it is that we are cutting someone off, right? Not in traffic, but maybe we're interrupting them. Maybe we're disrespecting them in some way, right? Some other place where we were planting seeds that was ripening as getting repeatedly cut off in traffic. And we work in that arena as well. And then it won't be long before we find, man, I'm not getting cut off in traffic anymore. How else am I going to work with those seeds if somebody doesn't do it? Then finally somebody does do it. And you find there's none of that reaction at all. The old reaction is just not there anymore because we've worked hard to clear it out of ourselves in that specific circumstance, but also in these others in different areas of life. By applying our understanding, my seed's ripening and nothing but, we respond differently. By responding differently, we've burned off a mental affliction seed and not replanted it. Burn off, don't replant. Burn off, replant new. Burn off, plant something different. Burn off, plant better, right? And that's the process of our path of habituation. We get to the point where, because of using our understanding, we reach the place where every experience is experienced as a ripening. That's a level bodhisattva. And when everything is experienced as a ripening, who is there to blame for anything? None, right? No blame. Not the anger arises, but I won't react to it. That's on the earlier bhumis. By 8th level, it doesn't matter what still happens. Our response will be, thank you. Like, burn it off, plant new. So we can get to this state of mind of nirvana, this extreme of peace, incapable of being rocked from our mental peace, but still have seeds for unpleasant things to happen. As the King of Kalinka story shows, that was pretty awful for someone who's supposedly in nirvana. It's not the outer circumstances that determine nirvana. It's the mental circumstance. It's the seed ripening circumstance that determines us as nirvana or 8th level bodhisattva. So the important piece is this part about had no conception of a self, had no conception of sentient being, had no conception of a life, and no conception of person that we talked about before. And it's cryptic. The self means the me. He had no conception of his me, the yogi, self-existently getting cut up. He knew his me was included in the seeds ripening. He knew the me of the king was totally misunderstanding the whole circumstance, including his own identity. And because of the yogi's perception, that actually would grow compassion in their heart for the king. Knowing their ignorance was pushing this negative deed is going to bring that king wicked karmic results. He had compassion for the king instead of, hey, blame. Then the yogi's 3 spheres, the emptiness of himself. We just said the emptiness of the king's self. Then the emptiness of his parts, right? The me and mind, his fingers and toes, they were here and now they're over there. And his perception was, they're no more mine when they're here as they are mine or not mine when they're laying over there. Right? Karmic seeds ripening. So it could be that when he did an act of truth, right? They all came back together. It's kind of wild. The emptiness of the mind. He maybe was thinking, well, the emptiness of the mind for the king was, he's thinking his mind, the wife, was being messed with by this yogi. And that made him jealous and upset. And he's misunderstanding the situation, but he's also misunderstanding the relationship with the wife. So again, the yogi's compassion would grow. It's like, poor guy, he is really suffering. And then the yogi's me, mine, life, him going through that lifetime, he's aware, seeds ripening. I guess this was bound to happen. I didn't see it coming, but that's life. Life is happening. And he saw it for the king as well. That's what it is to be a king, I guess. Poor guy. And then the me that goes through time, through lifetimes, I don't know, what would our reaction be to a life-threatening circumstance if you knew, that your next life was going to be better anyway? We like cling to life out of fear and misunderstanding. And we even, have vows to protect life that means our own as well. So we don't go put ourselves in harm's way because my next life's going to be better anyway. And for sure, we don't kill ourselves because that would foul the whole thing up. But if we understood that there was nothing to fear, no uncertainty, would you struggle so hard against the one that's threatening your life? Might you instead struggle to help prevent them from getting the bad karma of killing somebody? So presumably the yogi was all tied down, right? He couldn't do anything but, verbal to try to get the king to stop. But he didn't even do that. He just kept saying to the king, oh, king, I love you so much. I love you so much. Like, what if in the midst of your next angry yelling boss episode, you just say to the boss, I love you so much? Like, is that going to make them stop yelling? Maybe they'll pause, but probably it won't be the solution because they're waiting for you to get upset, and defend yourself or kowtow. I don't know what they're waiting for, right? But they're not expecting you or wanting you to say how much you love them. It's going to creep them out probably. So say it in your mind. Why did I go there? Those 4 no conceptions. But he didn't have no conception at all, right? He was experiencing this. But he's not experiencing any part of those 4 factors, either of his own or of the king's, as coming from them in them. All of it ripening, ripening, ripening. Right? So, the message for us is not when you find yourself in the face of being abused by somebody, take it on willingly. Although, in the course of our spiritual progress, we will reach a point where we will want to take it on willingly because we'll be at the place where we know mental seeds ripening so strongly that we know that if those seeds don't ripen this way now, they're gonna be worse later. And so maybe we do get to the place where we stop avoiding the unpleasant, stop being willing to harm somebody else in some gross or subtle way to avoid something unpleasant, because it doesn't work. It seems like it works, but it just brings more unpleasantness later. But until we're so convicted to that process, we're not to put ourselves in harm's way. We can avoid waltzing into a situation that will be unpleasant. We don't have to do it in order to protect them and our own seeds. But recognize that burning off unpleasantness without replanting unpleasantness, that those unpleasantness seeds are done and gone. When we ripen karmic seeds, they are done. How we respond to them plants new. If we respond similarly, it's as if we've replanted that karmic seed, but we haven't. That one's burnt off. We've just planted new. So we really can purify, purify, purify. Make merit, make merit, make merit. Like in immediate reaction. Pure, not as separate behaviors. This happens, I act this way. This happens, I act this way. How do I know how to act? 10 non-virtues, 6 perfections, right? We've got the guidelines, we've got the vows. We don't have to stop and think, make it up. Know our vows, and it will tell us. And King of Kalinka's story shows us. Love them. I read this beautiful thing by an ex-Christian pastor. He said he was so fervent in his ministry that he would, walk around in life telling people, God loves you, God loves you, Jesus wants to save you. And he just get icky reactions from people, even his congregation. And finally he realized people don't want to be saved. They want to be loved. So he said, I decided I'll just go around loving people. Hold the door open for them, smile at them, pat them on the back, tell them how nice they look. I'll just love people. And he said, whoa, his life just changed. He was happier, right? The people around him was happier. It's like, and I bring it up because our terminology is in order to save the world, in order to save the world. I just thought that was really helpful. So in my own mind, it's in order to love the world, okay? Because that feels harder. In order to love everybody, ay, ay, ay. In order to love the world. So do we see how understanding the marriage of emptiness and dependent origination, seeds ripening, leads us to the end of our mental afflictions? Because it removes the blame them factor that triggers our need to push away or grab to. Intellectually, we can get it well enough that we can start planting our seeds differently. But until we experience the seeds ripening directly, and then the fact that nothing can exist in any other way than as a dunchi or drachi, until we know that by direct experience, the kindness seeds that we respond with are still stained with the misunderstanding. And that's not a bad thing because we're making kindness. And that kindness is a goodness that will grow to increase our wisdom. And as our wisdom, intellectual wisdom grows, our amount of misunderstanding as we do our misunderstood kindness diminishes. And it grows us towards that experience of Chuchok, followed by Tonglam, direct perception, followed by the four Arya truths, followed by the rest of our time living according to what we now know as true, even when we can't see it directly that way. Okay. By conviction. Once you've ridden a bicycle for the first time, nobody can tell you that you don't know how to ride a bike, even if you never ride a bike again. You know, right? Same with these three experiences, Chuchok, Tonglam, Jtopyoshe. Even if it doesn't come to you again for a long, long time, you know. And we try to live according to it. We still have mental afflictions. So it's not like, oh, okay, I can be perfect. No. That's why we've got 7 bodhisattva bhumis to perfect. But we'll be on the first one, where we focus on the perfection of giving. Long story about why that is. Okay, the last question on your homework, I think, is describe the emptiness of an arhat's mind. Describe the emptiness of an arhat's mind. So arhat means they're perceiving everything as their own seeds ripening. All 3 parts of every experience, subject side, object side, interaction between. And then what's it like for that arhat subject side to be looking at the object side of their own mind? So it's a little slippery. It's like, what the heck is this thing mind anyway? That which is clear and aware. Is it the thoughts? So the thoughts are like the interaction between the subject and the object mind, but we're talking about the mind itself, the awareness happening. Arhat state of mind is forced by their virtue to perceive their own mind as empty of self-nature, as being ripening of seeds, mental seeds, as being free of mental afflictions. So when we hear free of mental afflictions, it sounds like it means, well, there's this awareness of stuff and there's just no more mental afflictions. But the emptiness of that mind means that it's ripening a mind free of jealousy. The free of jealousy mind ripening is happening. I don't know, I'm not getting it across. It's an actively appearing thing to experience one's mind free of anger in the situation where somebody's doing something unpleasant. It's not just that there's no anger. Are you feeling the difference? The mind is ripening free of anger. The mind is ripening free of jealousy. The mind is ripening free of doubt, whatever it doesn't have in the face of the experience that they're having. So they're experiencing their own mind in its deceptive nature. It's an appearing thing. To be aware is deceptive reality. In deceptive reality, being aware of deceptive reality, we would be aware that it seems like I have this thing called mind through which I am aware of other things. Some kind of nature in it, from it, in me, from me. To be aware of its deceptive nature is to be aware that my mind too is ripening every seed, is in every ripening. And then it starts this whole conundrum. It's like, well, wait, who's doing the ripening? Where's that seed? If the mind's inside the seed, how can, where's the seed? The seed's inside the mind. But do you see how just to say it like that is to misunderstand it? Like, here's the mind and it's got all these little seeds inside. And it isn't quite accurate. Right? The mind that we're holding to have all those seeds inside is seed ripening mind with all those seeds inside. And so it is a mind with all those seeds inside, but not from its own side with all those seeds from their own side inside. It does take some cooking. The state of mind that cannot be disturbed from its state of peace is a ripening, is seeds ripening. It's not a mind in itself that's reached peace in itself. It's ripening, 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 which means it needs to be perpetuated, perpetuated, perpetuated. And there's no mind other than that one that's ripening, ripening, ripening. That's its emptiness. So they're aware that this ripening, peaceful state of mind has been very consciously planted by virtuous seeds. And they're very aware that they need to perpetuate it by way of virtuous seeds, which is why you don't just disappear when you reach nirvana or Buddhahood, because you have to do something to perpetuate it. There is still imprints and exprints, imprints and projections happening. All right. So that arhat is aware that she's projecting her very lack of jealousy or anger or discontent, all very consciously previously constructed. Yeah. Nothing is anything but Dunchi's ripening. Geshe-la said, nothing is anything but Dunchi's ripening. And they are very real. Nothing has ever been anything but Dunchi's ripening. Like he keeps saying, cook it. Because I still have that reaction. If things are nothing but projections, they're not real. Like I fall off that cliff and I feel it and I go reel it back again. No, because things are projections, they are real. A thing that's not my projection, I cannot experience, can I? A projection is an experience. Can I experience something that I can't experience? It's absurd. No. Can I experience something that's not my projection? We think yes, but no, it's impossible. Every experience is a projection. The projection has to come from something. That something has to be similar to the projection, doesn't it? That's something we call a seed having been planted. but we're really misunderstanding. Because I don't know about you, but I'm thinking of the seed as then having this thing inside it, right? That's going to come out in a certain way. And it's more how the mind has been, how the process has been influenced by this experience is gonna become how the process is influenced as the result. Right? We're studying it in our Nagarjuna as investigators class. We're just getting there to the point where we can grasp how it can be and not be and be all at the same time. Okay. That's our class 7. So let's recall that one. Let me finish the dedication Kongli and then remember that one we wanted to be able to help at the beginning of class? We learned stuff that we will use sooner or later to help them in that deep and ultimate way. And that's a great, great goodness. So please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy being. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you and inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom may. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person. To share it with everyone you love. To share it with every existing being everywhere. See them all filled with the wisdom. See them all filled with loving kindness as a result. And may it be so. All right, thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to stop the recording and Kong Lee grills me. So you're welcome to stay and you're welcome to